everybody, and welcome to another week of the Agile IT Tech Talks. This week, we've got John Gilham, Agile IT founder and CTO, talking about IoT in the workplace. This is Sean Spicer over in marketing, once again filling in as the MC while Conrad is out of town. Just to keep things a little bit streamlined, we're going to jump right over into the presentation this week. Again, a reminder of the way the format works. You can go ahead and submit questions in the question pane, and we keep everything muted until the end of the presentation because this will be put out on the blog and on our YouTube channels, but then we cut that off so that to protect your privacy and your personal business information for the Q&A period. So right now, I'd like to introduce John Gilham.
So thank you everyone for joining me after the holiday weekend for this tech talk to discuss IoT in the workplace. So I'm hoping to get a dialogue at the end for some ideas on how we might enable your business and IoT to help automate things. But this presentation will hopefully frame some of the concepts, the technologies, the frameworks. It's not too technical, but we will talk a little bit about the benefits of working 100% in the cloud and using some local resources. So that's about as deep as we go technically. So without further ado, I'll get started. The first thing is what is the Internet of Things? So I'll be using IoT as an acronym here for the short, but essentially we're putting microchips into things. What used to be a light switch now is a light switch with a microchip. What used to be just a TV now can maybe be controlled remotely over the internet. And even light bulbs themselves are becoming, with the Philips Hue, have microchips and radio transceivers using the Z-Wave protocol to communicate with them. So very, very cool things coming around and allowing us to do a lot of automations both in the business scenarios and at home. Some of the most exciting things are at home, but most of the automation and business savings are coming more on the enterprise side. So, there is a evolution of Internet of Things. It used to just be what we talk about as a switch, some kind of control in a water plant or something like that, a valve, a pressure control. But what we're seeing now is also adding in AI and enhanced processing. So you could think about a car and its variety of sensors, infrared, speed, gyroscopic on how things are tilting or if it's losing traction. So all those things are coming together and locally being processed and maybe then being uploaded later on to the cloud for data analytics and or preventative maintenance. So again, what used to be IoT, and I just put in here that smart devices were talked about and discussed as early as 1982, where someone at a university wanted to know when the drinks were cold and loaded and out of inventory. But one of the additional business scenarios is inventory fulfillment and monitoring the temperature of the actual coolers out in the field so you know which ones need servicing to keep that good experience. So where is IoT being used? So there's a lot of consumer applications. I'd say smart home devices are the biggest, but you can think about Fitbit or other iWatch trackers and other health information that consumers are using that aren't necessarily FDA certified medical devices that would be used more in enterprise or infrastructure. So enterprise applications, where the difference between enterprise and infrastructure is kind of an evolving term. Where I see enterprise kind of coming out is smart meeting rooms or light switches or blinds in individual offices that might respond to, the user's control. Where infrastructure is maybe monitoring turbines of wind control systems or electrical plant or elevator maintenance or engines and planes. I actually heard Rolls-Royce now sells engines as a service. So they don't sell the engine anymore. They include all the analytics, the monitoring, the data, and essentially charge power by hour to the airlines that have bought the planes. So it's kind of an evolving world where that data analytics is actually going back for all the preventative maintenance that Rolls-Royce is doing for their jet engines. So, the types of IoT, and there's a lot of information out there, and the Internet of Things, I think, has evolved, especially now that we're talking about smart cars and the convergence of, again, not just simple on-off sensors or what's the temperature, but more real-time processing. But there is this integration of maybe connected services where you as a business can get IoT enabled with IoT enabled devices out there. So an example of that is Alexa for Business is a push where we can have Alexa in our meeting rooms actually control the lights, the TV, the projector, switch the sources so you're not fumbling for a remote. So those kind of things, but you don't necessarily have to go out and buy or code anything. So when I say IoT or integration of connected services, I think this is the way that most businesses can get started. And it might be just tying your alarm system to your cameras. So when someone swipes a badge, it's a little bit easier to just go and get the exact video feed of that. Another example that we're seeing is point of sale systems integrated with cameras. So if for any reason you want to go back to a specific transaction, you can just click on that transaction and see a video of that customer experience. So the other kind of area is IoT for custom business enablement. So this is taking a lot of the custom built, we tend to use Windows 10 IoT devices, but more of our stuff is not Windows. It's running on Raspberries or embedded systems that have APIs. And in those scenarios, I'm just going to move over to some devices here. We can take a variety of these Azure certified devices. I just actually filtered it for the Azure IoT Starter Kit. There's all kinds of I/O, temperature monitoring, and services that we can combine to do things like, hey, we just need a button that a customer pushes, and it might then integrate a cloud solution that blink the lights or do something on an overhead paging system. Or it might be as complicated as some of our customers who are monitoring power at an RV park and actually needing to bill that power usage back to the customers. And what is beneficial more about the Windows 10 IoT devices, not to get too much on a tangent, is when they're certified, especially the IoT Edge ones, it's going to allow the cloud to update and manage them, because security is becoming more and more of a thing, and you don't want to put things out there and then have to go out and touch them. That's going to be very expensive, especially when you have thousands of vending machines that might be out there in your fleet, or hundreds of trucks. So it's something that just being aware that you're going to have to constantly be vigilant in this new world and age, and that constant updates are required. So building a system or mechanism that can be constantly updated, especially controlled by the toolkit that Microsoft provides, is going to really help businesses utilize this without too much overhead. So, some of the places that IoT custom business enablement is being used is compliance monitoring. You think about security cameras, again, going back to individual transactions at casinos and tying them in with a variety of other sensors about what's happening. Preventative maintenance, we see that in elevators to jet engines, as examples that I gave. Remote diagnostics on cars, where cars are actually telling the dealership that, hey, I need to be serviced because of XYZ. The computers have been in cars for a long time now. What's different is they're all connected now through the cell phone network and mobile network. and talking to the dealerships, and car companies are using these data to provide better experiences to their customers. Asset tracking, where the dockless bikes, GPS being uploaded, to automatic fulfillment. I talked about the vending machines and when they're full or empty and need to be serviced. So you're not sending out trucks on low usage items. You're just going to what needs to be filled real time. So all those things, whether the data needs to be processed locally or in the cloud, will help define a little bit of the architecture of the IoT. So typically, and I'll go into the pros and cons of cloud computing model, and then we'll go into fog computing. Essentially, the pros and cons are reversed for fog computing. So the pros of cloud is essentially we can get you up and running with any of those Windows 10 IoT devices and a variety of other ones, essentially, today. You don't have to go deploy any server infrastructure or develop any custom embedded code to help tie things together, as there's a lot of out-of-the-box and almost codeless ways that we can enable businesses through Azure and the IoT edge. So it allows you to scale very quickly. So if you need to, operate a lot of controls, it allows you not to have to build up that infrastructure. And obviously don't have to maintain your own data center. The one problem is internet can go down, and what does that mean? For most, things, the cloud can go down, and the vending machine just doesn't work. They go to a different vending machine. It's not life or death. But in a medical scenario, that might not be an acceptable outcome. So also the more real time that you have, or the amount of data that you're transporting. If you could imagine making driverless cars cloud processed, where all the video feeds are going to the cloud, I mean, just the data couldn't go through the pipes. So you need that local processing. So there's this definition called fog computing, which I did not invent. I guess it means it's closer to the ground. Makes sense. So with fog computing, and I like to use a driverless car analogy, is you have a lot of IoT devices, but they're actually using a local high processing GPU enabled system to process all that data and run through the algorithms very quickly. So drones, vehicle navigation are some examples of that. So the drawbacks of the cloud-centric design, essentially the unpredictability and the requirement to be connected to the internet at all times, make it unsuitable for mission critical things. And what industrial could be water control. Obviously, if the internet goes down, I don't want my water faucet not to work. Same thing for healthcare and the expectations, especially during emergency scenarios. So, just like anything in a business, you have to determine what needs to be local and what can be moved to the cloud. And, again, there's pros to the cloud, where maybe not having everything at your data center would be beneficial, and it would be worth the risk. So, I wanted to just talk about a little bit how we use IoT services at Agile IT. So just to kind of give you a framework of our building automation, and I'm going to talk about a number of scenarios that don't use building automation, but we have an alarm system. That alarm system has motion control. It has our access control badge system. We have security cameras that tie back to a recorded system that keeps them for a certain number of weeks. We have motorized blinds that can be controlled and are talked to with our building automation system. We have centralized HDMI and infrared IR blasters going out to all the TVs. This allows us to turn them on and off or change the source. So if we want to have them run off the Roku individually, or if we want to show a program to all the TVs, on all the dashboards everywhere, we have the ability to just click a button and be running off a central feed, or using more of a branch node feed where the TVs are individually controlled. And then we have the overhead speakers for both music and also announcements. We actually announce the time every hour and half hour just to help keep meetings on schedule, and sometimes they run over a little bit. Just having that little reminder overhead is helpful. So some of the scenarios that we use at Agile IT for IoT, we've been doing forever for secure data center monitoring. So not only managing the access control system, so for things like HIPAA, actually following up and being like, hey, why did someone go into the server room? There has to be, a reason and a documentation or a security incident that looks into that. To, is it just too hot in there where the systems might fail? And also capacity and storage analytics for collecting all the data on all the components, the servers, the storage arrays, etc. So, we've been monitoring those type of things, but we're seeing customers now wanting to monitor their pools, the water soil of the palm trees, which are a fortune to replace if they're not watered properly, for landscaping companies. So just kind of using those same on-off temperature, humidity sensors and feeding that data back is quite helpful. So one of the examples of how our building automation ties everything together is, I'll give you an example when someone arms a system. So any employee can kind of close the building for the day. They just swipe their badge at the alarm console, since everything is integrated, both access control and the alarm. They hit the arm button. At that point, all the music stops playing, the TV's all shut off, the overhead lights, overhead speakers announce the time that they have to exit so that they have some visibility on before the alarm will go off. The blinds come down, the HVAC or thermostats are set to away mode, which I think is like 85 degrees or 50 at night. So it allows a wider variance. And on non-holidays and the weekdays, well, at like 5 a.m., we'll go ahead and it will automatically click the HVAC system back. So that's just kind of an example. And the same thing, you don't have to go train everyone, or I don't need my highly trained and qualified engineers running around turning off TVs. So, when we look at retail establishments, making sure the whole store is closed or open properly, all the things are set up, automating this might make sense for a lot of businesses. And again, the same thing for the morning. Someone just swipes their badge, first one to swipe in, all of a sudden all the blinds go on, the lights come on, the TVs come on, and everything kind of starts up for the day. We have a visitor notification where when someone rings a doorbell over the music system, it kind of just says, hey, someone's at the front door, someone's at the back door. And there's a little pop-up on the receptionist PCs in case they can't hear, or they have their door closed where they can't hear the overhead system. We have voice-controlled smart meetings. We use Alexa, so we can turn on meeting room projectors, change the lighting, joins conference calls automatically. It actually integrates with Office 365. It knows the meeting room that the Alexa is in, and it will say, hey, if I have to join, I actually already can see the calendar of this, and I know what meeting to join automatically. So it's just as easy as saying, Alexa, join meeting. And so another thing is we use kind of an e-ink display device that we have to charge once a month wirelessly, that we stick on the outside of conference rooms, and they just update every 5 minutes with the schedule, both the current meeting and the upcoming meetings. You could even check in, it is touch controlled, and book a meeting right then. I wanted to show you a interesting system. I don't see us needing to lock down Agile IT all too often, but this system just kind of shows you how cameras and access control systems can kind of talk together. So here I have the ability to look at our HVAC system, get alarms, control them remotely, turn off lights, view doors, open doors, click a one button lockdown, which is on any page, which kind of locks down all doors from there. We have the ability to not only see the door statuses, but when someone's granted, we can just click that and see Sean is walking in the door. It's kind of obstructed there, but Normally it shows there, and we could always go to the security camera, but just kind of handy to have a snapshot. So this is just, again, an integration of different devices and then integrated with a cloud application that helps organize everything so that you can easily report on who came in, where, and tie everything back. So this is a lot easier than necessarily users going to the own home control Win32 app for the alarm system and trying to fumble around for a lockdown app. This one button can control multiple systems or areas at once. So I just wanted to kind of show you an example of how we can extend out the alarm and cameras and other things to more cloud-enabled apps to allow you to consume that information more smartly. I wasn't going to put this, but I just love our mail to accounting system. So when you mail a check to Agile IT or send a bill to Agile IT, it gets OCR'd automatically. If it can't be OCR'd, it gets flagged and a human actually processes it. But that's all done as a service with our vendors Earth Class Mail, who does all the scanning, and Bill.com, who does all the coding. But the beauty of this is, we have approval systems for folks within the organization to approve different things and policies for double approvers where required. But checks get deposited automatically, so we never have to actually touch anything. And the bills, more importantly, get put into our accounts payable system. So, most accounts payables, it's kind of hard to get every bill in there, but here it's fairly automatic. So that's taken a mail using a device, a scanner. We happen to use a service called Earth Class Mail that does this for us, but then it takes that physical item and then splits it into a variety of microservices, which is either accounts payable and bill.com or deposited right into our bank if it's a check. If it's not one of those two things, then it gets forwarded via PDF to the recipient. And another example, as I saw an example of using insurance companies using customer smartphones and an app. So essentially you're using the customer's camera to take pictures of things to individually insure them for cheaper homeowners insurance. So using a smartphone app is kind of a thing. So in our interviewing process, we do some video interviewing where candidates are asked 5 cultural questions. They can do this on their own time. We don't have to participate with them as they're 5 standard questions. And so they can use their web camera or their smartphone app, and that's all integrated with our cloud system. So the recruiter, as they're going through the process and select qualified candidates to go through it, they don't really have to do extra work of entering them into a different system. All that's kind of synced together in the cloud. So those are just some examples getting from more the temperature and the traditional IoT to more modern, using maybe cameras and interfacing with customers without using your own devices. So the evolving use cases for IoT and business are big, but data center monitoring, management, and automation is one of the things that we talk about. Supply chain and inventory management, from RFID tracking to stock levels to distribution of knowing where a ship is, in the Pacific Ocean, to get and know its direction and the weather and its ETA so that you can schedule the trucks, the shipping yard, and everything else that needs to be coordinated. I gave you some examples of surveillance and security monitoring, but obviously we definitely use more sophisticated stuff with government or high security agencies. So contextual product features, kind of allowing customers to change things, allowing it to scan your body. I think Levi was experimenting with that not many years ago in their stores. And then healthcare, there's so much going on with that. That's a conversation for itself. But whether it's a elder care, a Fitbit to tell if someone's been immobile for too long and whether they need a welfare check, etc. Retail could be a camera to tracking items in a store to check out. So I gave just to give us some little more context, there is this Windows 10 Internet of Things. So if you just type Windows 10 IoT, you'll get this page. And these are just a couple examples of some enhanced thermostats. Here is a device that will actually make cocktails for you. You just type in what you want, and then over here is a restaurant menu ordering system. And I'm just thinking about this connected with this at the table, and your drink just comes out, and you get billed via your NFC connected smartphone. So very cool things there. So lots of great case studies on the Windows 10 IoT site. And the reason that we typically use Windows 10 IoT, or at least the Azure system, is because we need that framework to keep those IoT devices up to date. We can use a variety of systems or vendor systems, but if they don't have that framework to keep it up to date, it's typically, especially for these inexpensive devices, cheaper to just buy new ones than to schedule service calls to maintain thousands of them. So, that's the end of today's kind of scripted presentation. So I'd love to get some conversation and dialogue going. I'll let Sean come in and MC it, and then we'll transition to open the mic so we can start talking about how to enable IoT for your business.